to the cloud. All right, so once more, this is our final meeting for the semester for the AFS 212. And we are discussing kind of what the power dynamics look like in response to our communities coming together, particularly the youth. And this is really essential because as we're closing up, we're talking about political activism and coming together as communities, social change and what that can look like. And really, it can't look like anything until we find ways to come together, right? That has to be first and foremost. But if the ways that we find to come together are constantly being picked at and poked at and torn apart and criminalized, right, it makes it very difficult to have solidarity. It makes it very difficult to come together. So that's kind of where we're starting. So we started talking about the street racing that was going on last night, and then we started, and then I drew a comparison to from the street racing to early hip hop as an example with breakdancing, how that seems very, very similar. It's largely Black and brown youth. It's largely poorer communities, and it's a show of solidarity, folks having fun, but also very, very heavily and highly criminalized. Okay. Is that a pretty decent summation? Like a 5-second summation? Anything anyone wants to add to that for your peers?
I don't know. I don't have any specific off the top of my head, but there are historical examples of this very same thing. What we were talking about earlier in terms of racial solidarity or coming together across racial lines. Like there are plenty of historical examples of that. There's enough in the United States, at least, that there's a rich enough history that people would do well to expose themselves to.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I was gonna ask if there was anything else in the world that we wanted to discuss. Well, I'll leave it open. Is there anything else in the world that y'all want to discuss? Because if not, I think that this is a really good segue to what I wanted to talk about today.
No, I just had one more thing to add. Did you hear about the truce from the gang members that they all got together at South Park Saturday? Remember with the Rodney King 30-year anniversary?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
so
wow.
my dog had surgery. Well, he got neutered and he got a teeth cleaning on Thursday. And so was it Thursday? Wednesday, the day that I was late for class. And so like I've been really dealing with him heavily over the last couple of days.
Oh, okay.
He's been in pain and all kinds of stuff. So I've been slightly disconnected with what's going on. I just got a chance to actually watch the news this morning, and that did not show up.
Absolutely, it's not. It won't. Unless they.
Well, tell me about it. What happened?
I didn't actually go. I just knew about it because it was too many people. I'm claustrophobic, so I wasn't fit to find nowhere to park and walk with all them people and be still looking, because everybody with the truth ain't really with the truth. So I need to make sure that I watch from afar, which is what I did.
I hear that. Okay. All right. All skin folk ain't kin folk.
Right. I just thought it was a cool idea that they tried to get together again. It's just that they said they was their purpose was to reach the younger kids today, so they won't follow in the same mistakes that they went through or do the same thing they're doing. Although they're still doing it, but hopefully each one teach one. Hopefully somebody got something from it.
Mm-hmm. Which is another example, right? So historically, our communities have been trying to get the kids out of the gangs and whatnot. So gangs were developed in response to police violence, first and foremost, right? If we don't center that in the conversation, then we kind of default to the same criminalization of gangs that the rest of the social constructs has kind of built into our minds. So every single time you think about gangs and gang relations, that's the first thing I want you to think about. Remember that gangs were created in response to police violence, right? They were created as a measure of support and protection for the communities. Now, we know that has been tainted. We know that is no longer exactly what the function of gangs are, right? We know that the function of gangs are now to assist the schools to prison pipeline, right? as that kind of a fast track way into prison, right? Instead of fast tracking to college or any other like a career opportunities or anything, right? Anything that would actually build up our lives. So we also know that it is there to continue an economic stunt of our communities, right? As well as to continue the trend of our death rates, right?
Absolutely.
And so in response to that, the government does other types of things like feed guns and drugs and all kinds of things into the gangs, right? As that they have a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Which then feeds into all of the continued negatives that come out of gangs and gang life. So our communities, right? Our communities are very aware. We're cognizant of these changes. We're cognizant of the original development of gangs. And so we are, and we have been having conversations about how do we get our youth to not join gangs anymore? Like, what do we replace gangs with? So it's not just a discussion about, well, gangs are no good, right? So we don't want the kids there anymore. It's like, no, gangs served their purpose for when they were originally constructed, and now that purpose has shifted. And so we need to shift also, right? That's really how we need to frame that conversation. I'll reference 205 again here because it just keeps coming back up. I'm telling you, hip hop is in everything, y'all. So early hip hop, one of the founding fathers of hip hop actually started something called the Zulu Nation, and the Zulu Nation was designed to be the security for like the block parties, right? They also provided different opportunities for the youth to do something else in the community other than going to gangs. So they would be responsible for like word of mouth, spreading things for the parties, the flyers, helping folks sell their mixtapes out the trunks, that kind of stuff, right? And the reason that the youth got so involved with that is because largely the female-bodied people, the women of the community, were speaking about that recognition. They're like, hey, we understand why gangs were created, but also we see where they're going. So how do we shift our youth from going into gangs now that that is no longer doing the thing that it was created to do, right? So these are long, very historical efforts from our communities. And so in no way should we think about gangs as being something that, you know, like a dread or a burden to our communities, but really they were created to serve a purpose. That purpose has shifted, and it's time for us to start shifting with that. Thanks for bringing up gangs. I really like talking about them.
I think it's really important to understand just how like multifaceted like gangs themselves are, but also like the history of how they've come to be, especially in places like in LA. Like most of at least from what I understand, like a lot of the major like Crip and Blood sets were at one point like part of like the Black Panther Party. And so when they, you know, when the LA chapter dissolved, or when, you know, the organization itself dissolved, like I don't think a power vacuum is necessarily the correct term, but you have like all these people with these militaristic hierarchies, I guess you could sort of describe them as, with they, you know, Panthers, obviously they had guns, and they had like they were created to do something, right? And so when you have, you know, party leaders either dead or imprisoned, or, you know, the whole thing dissolved, it's like, well, you know, people still got to eat, and, you know,
yes,
drugs for the most part seem like a good way. Like, we don't know how it got in our community, but, you know, it's here.
I'll give us 3 guesses.
Oh, well, sure.
Right.
But I mean, like,
my mug for the week, y'all.
Right. But you know, you have a bunch of people who need something to do, basically. Like, that's what it boils down to at the end of the day.
Yes.
And it
bunch of folks who need something to do, who are not poised to do or are not expected to do the regular things to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because that overall system and these hierarchies that are already set in place have already established that you can't be, you can't be past a certain point. So it's almost like a natural progression how things have sort of, played out.
Yes, no, it absolutely is. It absolutely is, right? Us having these conversations and acknowledging that is building the equal and opposite force, though, to stop it, right? To stop that progression. So the Black Panther Party is an excellent example to bring up for that, right? The Black Panther Party does a lot of the same things, or did a lot of the same things that gangs were doing. It provided a place for folks to go, right? Something for folks to do, especially the youth, right? They started the free breakfast program, the one that was commandeered and is still used in schools today, and is also much less readily available to all of the folks who need it, right? But so they were doing a lot of those same things. The primary and the weaponry, of course, right? The primary difference was the drug activity, right? They didn't really have that because that wasn't part of what they were trying to do, right? So that was the change that the Black Panther Party is doing, right? They're saying, well, this is not a thing that our communities necessarily need. We don't need this, right? What we need is the rest of it. Like, yeah, we still need the guns, we still need the protection, we still need the opportunities and all of that, right? So when you take that away from the community, it does the same thing that taking Black Wall Street does, right? It does the same thing that looking at the rates of us going to college and going to, or even graduating from high school does, right? And demotivates. It leaves you at least feeling as though you have less options, because visually, right? If you see and you think that you have less options, right? You're not going to expand beyond those thoughts. You're going to stay there, right? So it absolutely is a continued measure of control.
You don't even have the vocabulary to even like describe your current conditions, or to even have that conceptualization of something beyond that, later down the line.
Exactly. All right, anything else that y'all want to add to this? Very cool. All right, so I'm going to circle back and I'm going to bring up some of the topics that I was going to talk about, was like 2 weeks ago or something like that. And then we'll kind of close it out with bringing it back to the conversation that we started last week about what can we do and what are we willing to do. So once again, bringing in 205, because there's just so many great lessons out of there. They read from an author named Bakari Kitswana, and he is the primary voice who talks about the hip hop generation. And so the hip hop generation is all of us who have grown up with hip hop, essentially, right? But he brings up this term called the image bite. I'm going to type it in the chat. It's image BYTE. So bite, like the size of the information that you would put on like a computer, that kind of thing, right? So the image byte is talking about the way that our images are constructed to send messages, right? So if you think of yourself as a file, right? Everything that constructs you is a file. That file is both seen by other people, right? And edited by other people, right? So let's see, where do we want to go with this? I want y'all to think about what has influenced your image bite. If someone were to look at you, like, and you can even think of an example of a someone, because everyone who looks at you is going to look at you differently, right? If a police officer looks at you, what are they going to expect based off of your image bite, right? When a teacher looks at you, what do they expect based off of your image bite? What do you think? I'm gonna give y'all 5 minutes to talk about this amongst yourselves.
I have nothing.
Um, I don't know. I think it's a pretty interesting question. And I mean, it can be answered like a multitude of ways, just depending on
Right, who it is you're encountering to me.
right.
If the police pull you over, they already have a perception, one,
Yeah.
because you're black.
Yeah.
They always think black folk are up to no good all the
Mhm.
time, or black or brown. So they already have their perception. And I just think people, period. I mean, when you go anywhere, even to the grocery store, you go in the grocery store, people come in and they see you, they already perceive you as something already because they black, they come in the store, they clenching their purses and carrying on.
Yeah. So when I was walking around downtown Santa Ana yesterday, there was a pretty heavy police presence. And like I would do everything like so yesterday I was walking down the sidewalk and there was a squad car like trying to make a left onto a street. I was trying to cross the street, but like I didn't want to be within like 50 feet of
Them,
a cop car. Like I'm not trying to be around them
right,
by any stretch of the imagination.
absolutely. And it's crazy that we have to feel that way. Just walking. Now you just
Yeah.
walk. Just think if you was driving, made a left turn in front of them, they're gonna follow you a couple of blocks at least.
Yeah.
Before they turn off to see that, he all right. Yes, I get, and that's crazy that we have to even feel that way, just walking.
Mm-hmm. I would say that, you know, maybe in my case, because I'm pretty, you know, lighter skinned, that maybe that there isn't as much of that perceived threat. But then just thinking about this now, like since I've been growing my beard out, like I've been getting those looks, and it's like,
normally get right.
You know,
Wow.
there's definitely like a difference there in how I've been treated, like you know, after growing my facial hair out and before, but also I also think like gender plays a pretty
Absolutely
pretty big role. Like I think just being a man, just being like, and I'm pretty tall too. Like I think maybe that sends some sort of like imposing, like I don't know what it is, but it's something that you know.
And it's crazy that you even have to feel that way just being you.
Mm.
And if you walk down the street, you probably like your beard. Now you probably like thinking like, damn, I may need to cut this off because they coming to push me now. They come around me now. God damn, before I had this beard, they just thought I was a little square. Now, they come and approach me in a different way now. And if they see this beard, they think different.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, now that I even think about it, the Freddie Gibbs show that I mentioned in the beginning of the class, after the show, it was at like the Novo was at like the Staples Center. I don't know if you've ever.
Okay, yeah, Staples Center downtown. Mm-hmm.
So you know where that
it's crypto. Don't say it like that no more. It's crypto.
Yeah, I still say Staples Center.
I know everyone's gonna say
I'll
that.
never get on the crypto
You're right,
thing.
Crypto crap.
It's Staples Center for
right. Just like the forum gonna be the forum instead of Kia Center.
Yeah, exactly. But what was I saying? Oh, after the show, you know where the big old intersection is, like right in front of the Staples Center.
You want the one like right off of Figueroa and like maybe 13th, where all the live, LA Live and all that stuff is right there?
Like literally where the entrance of the Staples Center is, like that street right there.
Okay.
Right.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it offhand, but I know what you're talking about.
So like after the show, you know, I was walking back to my car. I parked in a parking structure, and I was like, there was a pretty big group of people behind me. And you know, I crossed the street using the crosswalk. But as I was about to make my last cross, I guess, there was a squad car that pulled up to the intersection. And I was just like, man, knowing my luck, I know that if I jaywalk, like the group behind me, they all jaywalked, and they were all like mostly white dudes, I think.
It's okay.
They all jaywalked. And I was like, you know, knowing my luck, I'm not trying to get a ticket for any. Yeah, I'm not even trying to mess around. You know, my ex-girlfriend, she actually when we were in high school, she crossed the street from our high school to like across the street there was like a library, and there was a cop sitting right there, and like, mind you, she, you know, at the time she was a kid, like she got a ticket for that. It was just
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, they did. I got one too. I'm like, damn, ain't nobody coming.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, to answer like what influences someone's image by, like, that's such a, I mean, we could talk all day,
Right, that's
honestly.
even that if you go to the hospital.
Yeah. Oh,
kind of
yeah,
treatment you gonna
perfect.
get?
Yeah,
Yeah, what kind of treatment you gonna get if you go to the hospital?
absolutely.
They're gonna see you already first. And you insurance? Get that hole in your head.
Hmm.
Do you have insurance? Don't you come up here, Brody? Get out of here. Keep the steps. Go. Come on, go in there. Come on, go get the snack. Let's go get the snack. Go get the snack.
Those classes. So yeah, so of course, you know, I eavesdropped a little bit, and exactly, right? All of those different things are absolutely things that we have to take into consideration, no matter what part of what minoritized community you're in, right? Understanding the social aspects behind our image bites, right, can be a way to help protect us from stereotypes. It can be a way to help protect us from hopefully unnecessary interactions. The example of choosing to not jaywalk is very typical. It's very common. I
No,
remember
like
like one of my instructors.
I was legit like thinking about like, and it's wrong that we have to do this, but thinking about my mortality for simply just like walking across the street is,
Yes.
you know.
Right, you almost gotta think about taking breaths now. Okay, do I breathe when they come by? Or...
Right, hold your breath real quick.
Right, just
I'm
till they
telling you,
walk by.
when they
Yeah.
get behind me, I'm tensed up, and it's not like I did anything wrong.
Right,
I'm like,
I used to
my
be like
stuff is
that.
registered. I paid my insurance. Like everything is good.
I used to be that way, but I'm going 60, 75. I don't care. Get behind me then, because you ain't gonna get behind these people that just went whoop by us. Don't get behind me. Well, come on, give you a reason. Get behind me now.
Yes, it happens all the time. Don't look like a weed smoker.
Oh, let's see.
No matter how legal it is, don't look like a weed smoker. Right? Don't be caught outside, right? Don't be caught in your car.
Mhm.
And all of that is still illegal, right? It's really technically only legal for you to be inside of your house.
Right.
That's it. Right? People forget that part too. Mhm. So these image bites are really important because it also allows us to do more self-critique, right? What image bites are we holding onto about other people that are reinforcing stereotypes about others before we even get a chance to meet them? Right? Before we get a chance to actually have any interactions with them. How do we mend our communities and bring our communities together if we too have internalized a lot of these image bites and the things that go along with them?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to, I think again, like I said last week, that we need to be more, have those little block party meetings where we can all come together and get to know each other, at least for the sake, just for the block, even if just know your people in your block.
Yes.
So I think we
Yes,
need
for
to
sure.
start there and just learn about each other, because we all, everybody, we can see everybody, oh, this person is gonna be this person like, and like with me, I'm prejudiced a little bit, not like, oh, you white, you this, that, the other, although I sound like when I be talking, but like I live where all our meetings are at. And them people right there, they think they the only ones that live.
Mhm.
And I have to let them know, I will run you over. I don't care. Because they think just because they are Armenian and that they get the right away. I mean, no, white people out there do the same thing. And that's why I don't do anything in Burbank. I'll give them my money when I go to the store on the weekends. Other than that, I try my best not to do anything out there. Because the police follow me all the time. I mean, they, I can't support that community. Not with them not supporting me. They don't have like really no programs out there. Well, I ain't gonna say that. I might be lying. That I've seen, because I haven't went to our city hall. I've been there before, but I don't even try to go down there anymore because it's like a no-win battle with them people.
I'm going to problematize this just a little bit, because here is one of the tangible actions that we can do as community members, right? We really would benefit from moving away from the streamlined thought of, well, since they have not done anything for us, I am not going to do anything for them, right? And so what I'm not telling anyone to do, of course, is like, put your body on the line for other people, right off the bat. But have those communities actually done anything for us, or is this just something that we've heard? Has there been a historical connection between our communities, or is this just something that has been taught to us so that we can continue this separation of communities, which is really a separation of powers, right? And then, well, if no one has done anything up to this point, who's going to start? When does this script change? It doesn't change until we actually make the steps to change it. So it goes into what I was talking about last week about, it's really easy to put things off on, the fact that we don't have really prevalent leaders like we used to, or at least none who are, demonstrated to us as leaders. For example, Melina Abdullah, Dr. Melina Abdullah up at Cal State LA, who is also one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter LA, was arrested for protesting again, right? That's a community leader. Now, I don't agree with everything that she does and says, of course, but that's someone who deserves our support and recognition as a community leader because of the intentional steps that she's taking to make the changes in the community that she wants to see. It doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect, but she clearly understands the idea of, well, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that it can't. And for it to happen, somebody has to do it, right? Somebody has to be a regular community member who decides to make changes. So that's going to be one of the calls to action that I leave for y'all after this class.
And see, I think where I live, it's not enough of us out there to for them to even start a program, to even do anything to benefit Black folk or even brown folk out there. I mean, we're coming out there slowly but surely, but it's not enough of us to actually okay, we're gonna do this for you guys, or we're gonna have this right here for you guys.
Sure.
It's not enough of us out there. So
sure, but we haven't gotten to that point yet, right? We're jumping the gun. We still don't know about each other yet.
Right, that too.
Right. So maybe it's not necessarily an action of, okay, we need to jump into all the protests, right? Maybe it's an action of, let me learn about this other community today intentionally, because I really don't know anything, right? It's really a allowing ourselves to be okay with the fact that we don't know much so that we can learn more, right? The more we learn about each other, the more willing I think we'll end up being to work together and to build that solidarity, right? But it's hard to make a relationship with somebody that you don't know, right? Think about in your own households. If you feel like your partner is a stranger, if you feel like you don't know your partner, that causes relationship problems, right? That basic thing is going to go on with everyone else. So for us, really the place we need to start is just learning, just talking about each other, giving each other the space to tell us who we are, how we have been interacting over the years, right? And figure out what to do next. What can I do to support you, right? If we go to these communities, if we go to our own community and really, really reflect on what can I tangibly do to support you, we'll start to see those small changes happen incrementally.
I think another small point too that kind of brings awareness to it too, of supporting other groups such as the BML, is when people post on social media Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. But at the same time, they're there to support them. But like you said, you need to help the community out, join organizations, and also understand their point of view, because it's different when a Hispanic or Caucasian or someone else who's not Black posting that, because I think they're just doing it more because, oh, that's what's going on right now, that's what's trending, let me put it on my story, let me post something, instead of actually helping too.
I mean,
those are important rules too. Go ahead, Isaiah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, that's certainly a thing of, as far as people being performative and not actually caring about the things that they're posting on their social media pages. But there are, I mean, to give people credit, there are, I think there are a lot of people who have their hearts in the right place or have their minds in the right place, who are progressive minded people who do genuinely care about liberation and the well-being of other people, but they don't necessarily have the vocabulary or the examples, whether they be historical or even like in our present day. They don't have a reference, I guess. I think a lot of people don't really have, and that includes Black people too. Like, you know, like we were saying, you know, we don't have that same dedicated, like, sort of people that we can look to and point as leaders in the community, or you know, national leaders or what have you. I lost my train of thought. What?
It's all good.
What was that? What was I saying?
We don't have a blueprint, you know.
Yeah.
We're new to this. We're not true to this.
Right.
No leaders.
And I think social media also sort of, it dismantles some barriers, but it also reinforces others. You know, with social media, we are, you know, we have all of this history, this history that we've been talking about, or these examples that we've been talking about. We have them at our fingertips, like literally at our fingertips. But I think with social media comes like massive amounts of misinformation as well, or even just like massive amounts of like redirection, like in terms of, you know, sort of not giving you the, like, if they teach you about certain movements or certain people in history or certain current examples, like they can teach it to you, but they won't give you the full example or the full story or the full context, which is a problem, I feel. So
yeah, absolutely. Social media is basically an infant in this world, right?
Mhm.
It's something that needs a lot of care, a lot of attention, right? It's something that you have to constantly feed, right? It cries a lot. You got to change it, right? Social media is basically an infant. And a lot of the examples that we have did not have social media. And so we're still also trying to figure out how to use social media, or how to work with social media as part of a lot of these efforts. And so what we've seen to date is really just social media becoming another example of we are products of our environment, right? And so a lot of it ends up being trashy. A lot of it ends up looking really fake, or, you know, being very toxic and that kind of thing. That's just a reflection of our reality, right? And so if we think about the folks who are not able to do marches, right? The folks who are not able to write long papers and to be in the news and all of that, right? Well, what is their role? Social media can become a great way to bring folks in. But as a community too, so while we're also taking lessons from folks, right? Especially those who have come before us, we also need to keep them in context. I'll give you an example of this. So Maya Angelou's quote about letting people, believing people the first time when they tell you who they are, right?
Mhm.
Well, social media is kind of a reinvention of a lot of people a lot of the time. And so you're also learning who people are the first time multiple times, right? And so we have to allow for some of these changes to happen. It can feel very fake, and it can look very fake when people who have not said anything at all about Black Lives Matter, right, for example, suddenly start talking about it and suddenly start posting about it, right? Like to Jocelyn's point, it can be, right? To Isaiah's point also, it can be very performative, right? Absolutely. But maybe that is honestly where they're starting, right? Maybe that is honestly where they're starting. So use those as opportunities to engage rather than as opportunities to push back and say, well, you've never said anything before. That's great. Start now, right? We have to be the perpetuants of change. We can't do that if we're constantly going to push on people who have not been part of the struggle just yet. We need them to join, right? Let's foster that more. Let's foster that more. So as a community, what is our role for redefining our ideas of other communities? right? How do we fight back against the image bites that we have about other communities so that we can start to bridge this gap and really build that solidarity?
Well, I would say for me, and this may be super long-winded again, but but like I am just speaking on myself personally, like I'm very influenced obviously by the Black Panther Party, by people like Malcolm X, by people like uh Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, or um Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, like all these people throughout history, and whether they be Black or not, they're most of the people that I look up to are socialists or pushing some form of left-wing politic. And I think personally, I think, as we're talking about, racial solidarity, I think that's the core link, is understanding that we have more in common as a class of people in terms of like socioeconomics, right? Like we have more in common as working class people than, I have more in common with a working class, like, dude, even a white dude from like the Midwest, than I do with like someone like Jay-Z. Like,
Right. Yes.
There's an entire world removed from where I am and where someone like Jay-Z or Oprah or any of these like elite Black people, although they may have had that Black experience growing up, may have had the same experiences that I have had, that my dad has had, that anybody, but they're totally removed on that level because of that class distinction. And I think when people start to change their worldview to reflect and to recognize like class distinctions, whether it's in this society or wherever, like I think that's the key. I think that's the real first step to any sort of liberation, is across racial lines, is understanding that and it's very simple, but like understanding that there's more in common I have with some random person just going about their day than I do with any of these number of like of personalities that are propped up either through social media or like other avenues of like mainstream media. Yeah, like I said, super long-winded, but I don't know how clear I came off, but yeah.
Very clear. So I very much so agree with you, right? I'm very much so in alignment with that. Part of the biggest problem that our communities have that has really guarded us from being able to induce racial solidarity is because of that image bite and all the things that come along with it, all the stereotypes, all of that internalized racism, everything. And so racism for ourselves, as well as racism for other folks, right? As well as against other communities. And so if we stop focusing on the image, right, that we have been taught to focus so heavily on, and started instead focusing on the reality, right? That SES, that's really the reality of the situation. Yeah, that's going to demonstrate to you that you need that white guy over there who you have more in common with than you do with Jay-Z. Because if Jay-Z was really about it like that, Flint would have had clean water, right? Maybe we would have had somewhere for folks to do all the street racing, right? Maybe we would have even more scholarships for folks to be able to go to college, right? So keeping in mind, all skin folk and kin folk, that's not necessarily a negative thing. Sometimes it's really just an understanding of reality of the situation.
No,
the situation is we need those of us who are on our level together.
Yeah, it's necessary. It's entirely necessary for like people talk about gatekeeping like it's a bad thing, but sometimes it's necessary. Like you can't, like not everybody can go, like you need to have someone there, like really, just checking people, like, and again, we can I feel like a broken record, but we can use the Panthers as a perfect example. For as politically advanced as they were, you know, they did struggle a lot with certain aspects. They struggled with the woman question for sure. They struggled with
reflection of the times. It was
right.
the 60s.
Even though Huey P. Newton came out in support of gay people personally, there was an issue with just overall like elements of like toxic masculinity.
There were also some expectations that Dr. Huey P. Newton might also be bisexual, as well as Malcolm X.
I've never heard of that.
Mhm.
I did recently come across one for Eldridge Cleaver, who
Yes.
is what that's kind of who I was building up to. Like someone like him should have never been admitted to the party, even as influential as he was. Like I don't know how much you know about him, but like he was like a self-admitted rapist and like had all kinds of really bad ideas on like Black women and like, you know, really regressive things. But yeah, like who knows what the party could have been without someone like him, or if they had done a better job of like doing that gatekeeping and been like, you know, not necessarily everyone is cut out to do this type of thing. And
Yes.
there needs to be systems in place to prevent certain people from doing certain things. I mean, I don't know, but like, yeah, I don't know. I lost my train of thought again, but yeah.
No, that's okay. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a good thing that you're losing your train of thought so much, because that is a signifier for how deeply you're thinking about it, right? You're kind of going down the rabbit hole. And so down that rabbit hole, there's other rabbit holes. They didn't tell you that part. There's other holes down there, right? And so it can
Oh my God. I'm much better at this now than I was like a year ago. But yeah.
Well, good, right? So a lot of those things are very, very key, right? We need to understand who is in our corner and who's not. And we have to be okay with the fact that everybody who looks like you, everybody who sounds like you is not on your level. They're not on your page. They don't have your best interests, right? And so if that means that a person in another community who may not look like you, who may not sound like you, but has those same experiences and the same need and the same drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to make connections with those folks. That is the ally. That is the way to solidarity. That is the way to liberation, right? We cannot expect the folks who it is not going to help them at all, right, to really be part of these efforts when it, like I said, it doesn't help them, right? So those of us who need it, those of us who it will help, we got to find those ways. We have to work on this together. We have to bridge these gaps and build that solidarity.
Yeah. But I also think it's important to also what's the word I'm looking for? Like you should, I'm like, as much as I recognize like I have more in common with some white working class dude or wherever, like as I say that in and of itself is not enough for me to also have like to express solidarity with like that hypothetical person, because I mean, as most of us know, like the overwhelming majority of like white working class people in this country are like pretty reactionary, and like even though I share that same class status with them, the racial question is still, you know, I don't think people should just be going out and trying to recruit any old white person they see off the street, or anybody for that matter. Like, it's about being principled. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
It's about
let's change your scenario just slightly, because it's really easy to dismiss, because it's white man versus black man in this scenario. So let's flip it a little bit. So let's say that the person that you are trying to reach out to is a white woman. Right. So yeah, the racial question isn't going to be there for that person, but the gender question surely will be. Right. And so absolutely, it's absolutely not about just recruiting anyone off the street just because they're all kind of living the same life as you. But yes, right, that platform that you build has to be based on this overarching understanding together that we are better together, that we need these changes to happen,
Mhm.
right? So of course, just because somebody is white and working class doesn't mean that they're going to agree. Hell, they might be the most fervently disagreeing people, right? But vetting absolutely is necessary, right? Knowing who we're around, building our own audience, right? Making sure that we're not limiting the questions that we're asking. So solidarity cannot only exist in terms of race, right? It needs to also exist in terms of the way that race has impacted gender politics, in the
Mhm.
ways that it has impacted our economic access, right? Our educational access, right? All of these different nuances, all of these intersectionalities that are occurring. So those are definitely, like, it's a lot to have to think about all the time, right? But for us, it's entirely necessary. So if we were to change that scenario slightly, and now it's a white woman, how does your thought change?
That's a good question. I would say it probably doesn't immediately change the scenario very much. At least the way I'm thinking about it and the way I'm understanding your question, like I think
Let me switch it a little bit more for you. So how do you get common ground between you and your identities? And let's turn the other person into an Asian woman.
well, in that case, like the fact that they are a non-white person in a largely white supremacist country, like there is that sort of inroad, I guess,
Okay,
for discussion,
sure.
like maybe talking about, like, you know, sort of going back to this you know, this history of solidarity between like Black and Asian people, like that exists, like that happened all throughout the civil rights era in the 60s and 70s, like you know, talking with them from that perspective, I think would sort of be, there'd be a difference there. But I mean, then you could sort of do the same thing with white people, I guess, because there is that history there too. So yeah, I don't know if there's like a direct way to answer this question.
Of course not. There never is. I don't ask direct answer questions. No, I throw wrenches and make us think. That's it. That's what I do. Okay. So let's flip the script just slightly more, right? Let's say that you identified as someone from Central and South America, and the person that you're trying to bring into this conversation is a white woman, identifies as a white woman.
Damn, that's a good question that I don't have an immediate answer for that.
Because when we made it you and the Asian woman, right, it was easy to go right to race. You're like, oh, well, we can bond on race and race issues, right? Well, someone who also checks the white box in race, because it's the only option they really have most of the time.
Yeah.
Are they gonna do the same thing? They're gonna bond over race in order to bridge racial solidarity and all of these liberation issues?
Probably not.
Probably not,
Yeah.
right? So how do they join the fight then? How do they get on the same page?
Well, that's the question. No, but I mean, going back
close out with some ideas. This is where we're ending. So let's close out with some ideas.
I don't know. I mean, again, you could sort of reinforce that conversation from like a class perspective, but also you could yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could have conversations on like gender and how that affects, you know, either party. You could have a conversation on I don't know, just like location in the world, because like everybody's situation, you know, is different depending on where it is exactly they live, whether that's a different country, whether there's a different region in the country. Some regions in this country are like worlds apart from, you know, like someplace like LA is entirely different from somewhere like in the Midwest that I can't even, like some small town in the Midwest. Like it's an entirely different world. So
Right. We have to find other things to bond over. We have to find other things to bring each other in on, right? Someone who identifies as white and they're born in Africa, are they Black or white in the US?
well, they're white.
Are they? Because they're African too, right? Because they were born in Africa, and that's what the definition says of African ancestry and origin.
Nah, if we're using someone like Elon Musk, who, you know, was technically born in South Africa. I've seen people on like social media posts like Elon Musk is more African than the average Black person in the United States. And it's like, no. Even with him being born in South Africa, I don't care that he may have been raised there his entire life. Like he is fundamentally like not African to me. Or like literally, I don't know. I remember, and I could probably post it in the chat, but I remember watching a video a long time ago about the conditions in South Africa between Blacks and whites. And it's very scary. I'll just put it that way. Like the way these white South Africans talk about Black people is I don't know.
Sure, right? Everybody is focusing on their own selves, the things that they have been taught about other people, things that they have been taught to internalize, that process themselves and their own image bites, right? Because remember, it's also being edited by the rest of the world. Our image bites are being edited by the rest of the world still, right? And so if we switch it from what the reality of the situation is, we might be able to find even larger groups of support, right? The reality of the situations may look very different from what we've grown up thinking about, right? Like how often do you think about the question of, well, what is someone who looks white, but they're born in Africa, right? What do they identify as? What are they, right? Well, no, we wouldn't immediately look at them and say, oh, they're Black, they're African, right? But is that also taking away from some of their reality? Is that also taking away from some of their identity? Is that taking away some of our own collective power? Right? What experiences do they have that can be useful at the table? How do we bring them in to say, hey, you are part of this in some way, shape, or form, whether it's by birth or whether it's by identity title, whether it's by identity construct, right? Whether it's by your socioeconomic status. And so this is how change benefits you. One of the things that I primarily believe is that if we switch a lot of the conversations to how liberation benefits other pockets of communities as well as ourselves, right? So not just centering us, but centering our entire global community, right? How this benefits us collectively. That will take away a lot of the strain that we found ourselves with, focusing so heavily on race and ethnicity, right? Concepts that, as we've seen all semester, are much more muddled than what we have been taught to look at them as. So of course, I don't have answers to any of these questions. These are all just large things that I think about all the time and just so happen to throw those wrenches at y'all once a week.
So do you think those people that in those communities, they even want to learn about other cultures? I mean, like, what can they do, or like, what can we do to change things? Like, first is a person that's not Black. They don't want to go through what we've gone through, so they're going to tend to stray away, like not want to, no, I'm good. Attitude, like they don't want to come together and find a way because they see how we're being treated. So they don't want that same treatment. So they're not even willing to come to the table to try to have a discussion about how can we change or what can we do?
Sure, absolutely, right? But we also don't know what we don't know.
We don't.
We know that we don't know it, right? So a lot of those communities don't know that they don't know a lot about other communities either, right? And so it's kind of like an open invite to learning about them, to learning about each other. Start with your own willingness, right? Other folks are more willing to learn about our communities when we are more willing to go learn about them, right? Yeah. It literally has to just start somewhere. Somebody's just got to do it, right? And we demonstrate to other folks how to do it by those intentional actions. So does everybody in those communities want to learn about other folks? Absolutely not. We don't. We still in the oppression Olympics. We still sit. Why should we care about Asian folks and all the discrimination they've been going through in the last 2 years when we've been going through for the last 1,000?
Right. See, that's what I'm talking about. That same
Those are
idea, like,
conversations
why would
that
I-
we are currently having. Those need to change. They are not conducive to change. So
They're-
they need to change.
Right. They're regressive, ultimately.
Exactly. Everybody don't want change, right? Some people really just want to survive. Some people have learned well enough how to survive that that's good enough for them right now, right? They don't really want to add anything else to their plates. They're going to exist in all of our communities too. But the folks like us who do have that investment, we just got to go find them, right? We find them by having these conversations, being willing to be uncomfortable, being out here in this world, talking to each other.
Yeah.
This has been great. I've really enjoyed y'all all semester. I know it's been a little choppy. Things have been a little off for me, but I really appreciate y'all. I think this has been some really, really good dialogue. I hope it's been useful for y'all also.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the conversations we have in this class. So yeah, it's been a very good experience.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. All right, well, let's lead out with some affirmations.
You're almost there. This far.
Yeah.
This much more, that's it. We're almost there, y'all. Okay. Whew. Any other affirmations y'all want to leave for your peers?
Enjoy yourselves.
Yeah.
Let me
Just
see
try to
what-
stay sane. I'm
Yes,
trying to
yes,
I'm
yes.
trying to stay sane.
It's hard.
So yeah.
Yeah, it is Mental Health Awareness Month, so take care of that mental, stay sane. Those
Damn,
are
is it-
important things to do.
Isn't that ironic? They made Mental Health Month on the month of finals. That's interesting.
Listen, I don't have time to sit and have a whole nother conversation about this, okay? I do got to get to another meeting. But isn't it ironic?
It's very ironic.
Yes, mind your self-care. Please take care of yourselves. Your mental health is wealth, right? Don't let the rest of the semester stress you completely out because it's almost done, right? It's not going to matter 5 years from now. So take care of you.
Will you be on campus at all? I know this is our last meeting, but will you be in the resource center at all or
So
anything?
I am planning to go to campus Thursday. I have to solidify where I'm going to be. I'm hoping to be in the BRC, but Kat is actually out for this week because she got COVID last week.
Okay.
So I still have to check in with her and see how she's doing and make sure that the center is going to be open. It should be open because she's got student assistance, but I just want to make sure. So for right now, I'm planning on Thursday from about 10 to 3.
Okay. And I don't know, maybe this isn't the right place for this question, but like, is there any work that can be done at the resource center? Like, is there anything that needs like doing?
Let me get back to you on that.
Sure.
Let me ask Kat. I can check in with her and see. Were you able to go check it out last week?
No. I mean, like I've sat in I haven't sat in it. I've sat around the Black Resource Center. I've never actually gone in it. Just because like I don't know anybody and it would feel awkward. But
Cool. So I see you there on Thursday then, because we're gonna change that. You got to be in there. So all right,
For
I'm
sure.
coming to campus. We're gonna figure it out. If it's not open, I'll make it open. It's gonna be open.
Cool. I'll be there then. Alrighty.
And so that will also be for anyone who needs any extra support, even just some relax time. You want to hop in and get a quick joke. That's cool, but take care of yourselves. I will be there to support. Mind your self-care, and I will see y'all soon.
Cool. Thank you, Professor.
Thank
appreciate
you. Yes, have a good one, y'all.
All right.
So the only thing